Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, December 14th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Peach Bowl game against Georgia is in 17 days, the game against Michigan in 346 days. That Peach Bowl invitation was actually only officially extended on Tuesday. Representatives from the game came up to Columbus and made things official with Athletic Director Gene Smith and head coach Ryan Day. So now that it's officially safe to make your travel and party plans for New Year's Eve, I know you were all waiting nervously for that news. Something else that is also now official is that safety Jantzen Dunn is now in the transfer portal. He announced that on Tuesday afternoon. Kevin Noon of Buckeye Huddle is here. Kevin, this was to me one of those cases where you see a guy not playing at all on his side of the ball in his second year on campus, and that's kind of one of those warning signs that might be how that story is going to end.
Yeah, with Jantzen Dunn, certainly, top-ranked player, I believe, coming out of the state of Kentucky the year he signed with Ohio State. Really only has seen special teams action, played in 4 games this year, 2 games, I think, the year before. It's just not necessarily worked out. It's going to happen. You recruit a lot of positions, you recruit multiple guys, and you just don't know which ones are going to stick. And it's not a case of, this guy wasn't able to cut it at Ohio State. It's just sometimes a matter of what fits within the system. Remember, he's gone through a couple of defensive coordinators in his time at Ohio State. And, he's not the only one out of the defensive back room to go. This now marks 3 that are leaving via the portal this year. So it's just, it's part of the natural attrition. And even if we weren't talking about a transfer portal as being something, it's still something that's not foreign to what happens. You just have guys that sometimes move on.
Yeah, and, it is probably not a coincidence that 3 guys this year, there are 3 guys from that 2021 secondary class, Jantzen Dunn today, Jaylen Johnson earlier this month, and then Andre Turrentine back in the spring. 3 guys who were safeties who were recruited under a different defensive format and a different defensive staff. Not a huge surprise to see some of those guys entering the portal, as they came for one thing, and then when you have a coaching staff change, well, then you get a different thing. So not a huge surprise there. One familiar name from the last couple of recruiting cycles who did not sign with Ohio State, Derek Davis. He is a safety out of the Pittsburgh area who ended up at LSU. Well, he also didn't get what he necessarily expected when he showed up at college in Baton Rouge. He entered the portal on Tuesday as well. Just one of a number of potential targets for the Buckeyes just to keep an eye on. But, Kevin, Ryan Day was asked about the portal and, how are you going to really have to change your approach there? And it didn't sound like he wants to, be one of those teams that's pulling 15, 20 guys out of the portal in a given year.
Well, Ohio State certainly isn't a program that's having 15 or 20 guys exiting. There certainly is a decent amount of attrition from Ohio State, whether it be early departures for the NFL or portal guys. But Ohio State is certainly one of the programs out there that's still getting it done with high school recruiting. And if you're going to sign classes of 20, 22, 25 guys, you can't also, on top of that, put 15 guys in via the portal. So Ohio State isn't necessarily going to attack it in terms of we're going to volume grab out of the portal. That's just not necessarily the approach, but you have to constantly evaluate how things are going, what the trends are, what the numbers are. You've got to stay under the 85. So, we could look back at the show in a couple of years and say, well, wow, that was foolish. That was short-sighted. Things are completely different now. But at this point, that's not the case. They've really been very targeted in what it is they approach out of the portal, and they've been pretty successful in those portal grabs.
And, the portal is just guys leaving in the portal and guys coming in the portal. There was a great question today from Doug Maurice from Cleveland.com. He asked Ryan Day about trying to balance the portal, which is essentially the college version of free agency, and recruiting an early signing day, which is now just a week away from today. And that's sort of like the NFL draft. And so would be like if the NFL draft and NFL free agency were all happening while teams were also in the middle of trying to compete in the playoffs, in the NFL playoffs. That's kind of what the reality is right now for college coaches, especially the coaches in the playoff. And that's kind of a challenge to balance recruiting with early signing day and the portal. And, also, hey, by the way, you got to play Georgia in about 3 weeks. So, and I think unsurprisingly, it sounds like Ryan Day's not necessarily a huge fan of that current calendar.
Quote unquote, it's a lot. That's what's going on right now. That's what December is. December's not about holidays and spending time with your family. It's about recruiting and bowl preps and everything else. And it's certainly a lot for a coach to have to take in and be able to process and juggle all of those plates. But I guarantee you that in Division 1A, FBS, that, with 4 teams getting in and 127 teams not getting in, there are 127 head coaches, or I guess more with the people coming in and leaving or whatever, that would love to have that issue of trying to figure all of that out. But it is a lot. The calendar is a mess. Anybody who thought that putting this in December is crazy. National Signing Day, early National Signing Day, seems to be 2 weeks later than it used to be. So, I mean, it's even in a worse spot. So I think you're going to see some very vocal coaches at some point, maybe not necessarily outwardly, but who are going to let people know in certain positions of power that you're kind of setting up a little bit of a difficult march for people to get through, juggling all these things. And the NFL example is perfect of, let's just throw all that stuff right as you're getting ready for playoffs. Why not?
Well, and one of the other things that people in charge of college athletics have to try and balance right now is NIL. We got a chance to talk to Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith after that press conference in a more informal setting. Just kind of, we wandered out of the room and there he was, and it was like, okay, we'll talk to Gene Smith for a while, I guess. Just a small group of us with him in a hallway. He had some really interesting things to say about how they're trying to balance NIL and getting enough money into the collectives, which they technically can't have any direct influence over. They can't tell the collectives, hey, you should give this much money to this player or whatever. Those have to operate independently. So they have to balance getting the money into the collectives with also getting enough money into the athletic department itself to pay the bills to support 36 varsity sports. So how is Gene Smith trying to balance that? And, if fans are trying to decide, hey, should I give $100 to the athletic department or $100 to the NIL collective, what was Gene Smith's advice there?
Yeah, I mean, right off for that question, it's call the athletic department, call development. They will help you get there. They will help you prioritize what is important to you. Where does your passion lie? But this all goes back to a point that I made several weeks ago, and this isn't an opportunity for me to pat myself on the back because I already knew I was right, is that there's a finite amount of dollars out there, and the university is going to be, the athletic department is going to be competing against the collectives for certain amounts of money. People aren't necessarily going to be like, well, I was going to give $5,000 this year. Well, now I'm going to just give 10. I'm going to give 5 and 5. Gene Smith has 35 other sports to worry about. And football and men's basketball are really your profitable sports. And you can kind of with half scholarships and quarter scholarships and some other things going on there. There's not as much of a loss in some sports as you might think, but football really carries everything else. So he's got a lot of concerns there. And I learned some things about how some of these, we talk about maybe the small donations, the $100 donations or whatever, that may be going to some of these quote unquote non-revenue sports, but how important they are to these non-revenue sports to fall into certain, discretionary funds of how they can handle things. So it's really important. But if you're thinking about giving, the message is to contact the athletic department. They will help you kind of sort through things and make sure that the money's going right. I mean, there's certainly going to be times where we're like, well, you should probably go to one of the 3 Ohio State collectives. I mean, that's going to be the answer sometimes. Sometimes it's going to be something else. But, we're in a brave new world with, portal and NIL and hell, January 1, we get sports gambling in the state of Ohio and everything else. I mean, if you would have told me 10 years ago that this is where we would be going on 1/1/23, I would have told you you're crazy. But crazy has prevailed.
It was wild to be standing there talking to a head coach and talking to an athletic director about, players getting paid, 5, 6, maybe 7 figures at a time. And, that this was not a story that was going to lead to a Sports Illustrated cover story about rigged raffles. This was just like, no, this is just how it happens now. And and legalized sports betting. He started talking about that. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. That's like 2 weeks away. And boy, is that going to be another whole wild can of worms to open up. So, and it's all happening at the same time, which I'm sure everyone is really excited about and seems thrilled to be dealing with the entire world changing all at once. But from the gambling and NIL and the portal to this year's team, and specifically the Peach Bowl, I think one of the big questions that we heard asked today that was kind of like was the status of running back TreVeyon Henderson. He was obviously banged up for much of the second half of the season, but when Day was asked about whether TreVeyon Henderson would be back practicing and ready for the Peach Bowl, the answer was not like a real clear yes, which was kind of interesting to me.
Get back to me in a couple of days. We'll see if we can give you an update of some sort. So it was not necessarily he's ruled out, but it also wasn't, everybody else, Matt Jones. Yeah, everybody else seems to be, everybody seems to be progressing well, and, we're going to be so much more healthy for the Peach Bowl game. What about TreVeyon? Well, get back to me in a couple of days on that one. So it wasn't, we're ruling him out, but I'm, at least on first blush, I'm not fully sure that we're going to see him in a participatory role due to injury, but we'll see. Stranger things have happened there. Ryan Day knows every time that he has a presser with us in season that there's going to be multiple injury questions just with the basis of how this team's health has been, and that's just kind of something that's always kind of a front burner issue. He could have very easily taken it in a different direction, and that was the choice he made.
Yeah, he took it. It sounded very much like his answer on Jackson Smith and Jigba a couple weeks ago, which was kind of interesting. Another weird situation involved a different running back, and that was true freshman running back Dallan Hayden. Now, he ran for 146 yards, 3 touchdowns on 27 carries at Maryland, and then barely played the following week against Michigan. And Day was asked, so, hey, why did he not play nearly as much after he had a really good game the week before? And he was kind of cagey about his answer. It didn't sound like he was asked a follow-up question about, was it a ball security issue? And it was like, no, it wasn't necessarily that. And at one point he said, and this is a direct quote, "It's just kind of the way it went." Which, am I wrong there? Or is that another kind of like, that's a weird answer too.
It is a weird answer. Obviously they were having some success with Chip Trayanum until they weren't. Dallan Hayden certainly has had a couple of strong games this season, but not necessarily against a run defense like Michigan. So there's something to be said about that. He certainly involved Tony Alford in terms of it's his decision on a lot of those types of things. And, Tony has always been very complimentary of Dallan Hayden and what he's been capable of. And then, of course, I've had people follow up with me after hearing that. It's like, well, do you think Dallan had a bad week or a couple bad weeks or whatever? I'm like, Dallan is one of the most respectful kids I know on the team in terms of everything, and he's very serious about everything. So that one kind of left me a little puzzled in terms of what to truly make of it. But I think that going into the Peach Bowl, you have Mayan, you have Chip, you have Dallan. And you have to kind of be ready to go with that. And we don't know necessarily what the status of TreVeyon's going to be, but maybe assign a coach to be the Dallan coach and be able to remind Tony Alford and Ryan Day that he's there and he's available, and that number 5 is eligible to play on offense.
The opposite of a get back coach, a get forward coach. Get Dallan Hayden forward. Yeah, that's if they do bump up the number of allowable assistant coaches, that's certainly one of the possible job opportunities, along with the throw Marvin Harrison the ball in the red zone coach. That's another good one that they might want to look at. And finally, this will not come as a real big surprise if you've been shopping for tickets on the secondary market. I was just checking StubHub as you were talking there. The get-in price is north of $400 for this Peach Bowl. The get-in price, if you want a non-standing room only ticket, like if you would like to place to put your butt in the game, your get-in price right now is close to $500, including fees. And there is quite a bit of demand for this Peach Bowl, is kind of what that adds up to. And they had folks from the Peach Bowl there to talk about, to officially invite Ohio State to the game. And it sure sounds like, Ohio State's tickets are gone. And if you want to get there, tickets are going to be at a very, very extreme premium for a game like this.
First and foremost, I'm glad that Ohio State accepted the formal invite from the Peach Bowl, because it would have been really awkward for me to just show up there right around Christmas and there not be the Buckeyes in the game. I would have had a lot of egg on my face. But Mercedes-Benz Stadium has some seats that are expandable. Well, those will be expanded, and then above those, there'll be the 2,000 SRO standing room only tickets. Ohio State and Georgia each were given 13,000 tickets as part of their allotment. 500 for each school go to the band, which means 12.5 is what the allotment is. Here on Monday, gone on Wednesday, and then a lot of tickets just get snapped up either by season ticket holders or, there's a lot of business type tickets for sponsors and everything else. And a lot of those have found their way to the secondary market. And you're right. I had looked at TickPick, which is a ticket site that it already figures the fees into the price so you don't get blindsided at the end. And I was seeing about $425 to get in for standing room only and into the fives just to get, to have somewhere to sit for the game. So demand is going to be high. Obviously, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is 90 minutes away from Athens, Georgia. There are probably a ton of UGA alum that live in Fulton County and Cobb County and through that area. So people are like, well, I'm going to wait until the last second and hopefully find tickets like at kickoff. Well, so are all of them. So you really want to make sure that if you want to go to this game, that you should probably have some sort of plans or at least a bar as a backup, because I think the ticket demand is going to remain high all the way through. I mean, when Gary Stokin, the CEO of the Peach Bowl, comes out and says that they think that this may be the highest attended game in stadium history over other Peach Bowls, CFP semifinals, and Super Bowls, there's something to be said about that.
If it's easy for people to drive, from their homes in Atlanta or their homes in Athens, and just come for the day, you're going to have a lot of people showing up without tickets thinking they may be able to get in. So my guess would be that Kevin is right, and the price will not drop nearly as much as you might otherwise expect for a game, in the hour before kickoff, 15 minutes after kickoff, whatever it is. So yes, you may want to, play. Prices probably won't go up, but they might not drop nearly as much as you might expect in the days leading up to the game. So just kind of keep an eye on that if you are planning on attending the game. So that will do it for today. Well, if you're thinking, I was thinking about maybe going to the game, and now you're thinking, that might be a little expensive, why don't you spend that membership money on a membership at BuckeyeHuddle.com instead? Kevin and Tony and I covering the team, Mark Givler and Alex Gleitman, who are working overtime right now. We're very, very busy in the last week before early signing day. Ross Fulton, Michael Pettit, Justin Whitlatch, Devin Radcliffe, our 4 X's and O's gurus. We're going to have Ross on tomorrow's show to talk about the matchup with Georgia, so that's always a fun listen for you guys. But if you like that kind of show, you would love being a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com as well. Lots of interesting insight and analysis from a team of insiders you just can't find anywhere else. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.